Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome here to the launch pad and our live launch coverage of the second launch attempt of the Vega rocket from KOUROU in the French Guiana. You are looking at a live view of Ariane Launch Area 1 at the KOUROU Space Center in French Guiana, where we are counting down L-30 minutes, 42 seconds, and counting until launch. Launch was delayed 2 days ago. Due to needing some more time to check out the vehicle in preparation. It was a abort right at the very end of the count, so we're hoping tonight we will see a successful flight of Vega. We don't see too many of these rockets launch, so we're glad to have you joining us here. If it's your first time here, though, welcome. My name's Zach. I'm the founder and host here at the launch pad. Here at TLP, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together, and we've got lots of you joining in, seeing many regulars in the chat. Glad to have you here. We've got Steven is watching from Malaysia. Smooth Juice is from Titusville. We got Jonathan in Boston. We've got Jason is in Iowa. Linda is in New Jersey. Count is in Massachusetts. Ginger, good to see you as always from Lakewood, Washington. Paul's in Michigan. It's great seeing so many of you joining in. Paul from Nova Scotia. Harrison from Pennsylvania. Glad to have you all here with us tonight as we continue through the count. We do have the live audio patched in on the clean feed. We thank Arianespace for providing that for us to be able to patch in. And we do have a rough idea of what we'll be able to see here this evening as we go through the final bit of the count. Our clock changed there for some reason. That is not the correct countdown time. Bear with us there. Now it reset. Now it was the right time. Good old technology. We're just going to keep that hidden. We're counting down 28 minutes, 40 seconds and counting till launch. We are about 7 minutes, 15 seconds away from Arianespace beginning their actual live coverage. That's where we'll get the updates from the Mission Control Center in KOUROU with Stefan Israel. Always great to see that team in the kind of bullpen there, or fishbowl, as we continue to count down to launch. If you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad. We'll work on answering those live throughout today's broadcast. You can also learn more about today's mission by heading over to tlpnetwork.com/launches. Click onto our launch control calendar and see all of our upcoming launches. This is the first of 2 launches this evening. We are now 28 minutes from launch of the rocket that is on your screen, and we are counting down 1 hour, 47 minutes, 30 seconds until launch of some more Starlink satellites launching out of Cape Canaveral this evening as well. And we hope you'll join us for that live broadcast following the conclusion of this one, as we will be covering both of those live here this evening. The clock's going crazy. Good old technology, right? We can launch rockets to the moon and Mars and beyond, but sometimes technology doesn't always work out. For those that have been following along the developments with Arianespace, this is a regular Vega rocket. This is not the return of Vega-C. We need to update the thumbnail there. That is being delayed till next year, when we will hopefully see it return following the anomaly that it had during its last launch attempt. But nonetheless, still rare to see a Vega launch actually happen. If we take a look at the launch statistics for this year, this is the first launch of Vega for this year. This is the 3rd launch from Arianespace this year. And this will be the 173rd launch attempt of 2023. Take a moment, let us know in the chat, how high do you think that number is going to get this year? Do you think we'll hit 200, 225? Let us know in the chat. We know SpaceX is really going to be pushing that number, trying to do 8 to 10 launches, it seems, each month for the rest of this year, as they really start to load up the launch calendar, really ushering this new era, pushing these new numbers, and seeing the United States lead the world launch calendar, even behind Russia and China. Russia's been very quiet, actually, launching this year. This will be the 21st regular Vega launch and the 49th launch from this launch pad, which you are looking at, which is the Ariane Launch Area 1 pad at the KOUROU Space Center in the French Guiana. For those wondering where this is located, that's actually going to be in South America, is where it is. Just at the very top right, the northeast part of South America is where this launch site is today. Lots of people just joining us in the chat. Great to have you here. We got Lolly watching with your son Archie from Australia. Well, welcome. Hello, Archie. We got Ophelia is in Ontario. We got Trevor in Australia. Denise is in California. Aiden's in Manchester. We got Timothy in Montgomery. Mike is in Renton, Washington. We got, I'm going to say it wrong, Francisque, sorry, from Mexico City. Adrian is in Miami. Michael's in Sydney, Australia. Great to have you all joining us here this evening. GG Birdie Mill, what kind of rocket is Vega? It's not a smaller version of Ariane 6 development, isn't it? No, Vega is a different vehicle. It's all in the same family line. There's Vega, there's Ariane, Vega-C, Ariane 5, Ariane 6. It's all part of their family of rockets, but it is a vehicle that we've seen launch for a number of years. We just don't see all too many of them. Denise, hope it's not off topic, but why? But do you know why Cape Canaveral is not called Cape Kennedy anymore? That's a really actually interesting question. I haven't super dived into that. Let's see what I can find here. It was officially changed in 1973. By the U.S. Board of Geological Surveys and the U.S. Department of Interior. It wasn't popular, the decision, but Cape Canaveral had been the name since the 16th century. And then it got called Cape Kennedy during, obviously, what we all know and love is that early NASA era. The name John F. Kennedy Space Center name remained the same, but it had Cape Kennedy, but it changed back to Cape Canaveral on October 9th, 1973. So actually, 50 years ago tomorrow, is when it had that name change back to Cape Canaveral from Cape Kennedy. Great question. You learn something new every day. Appreciate that. If you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the Launchpad. That'll flag it in our system so we see those questions coming in and can make sure that we answer those live for you. If you're just joining us, though, welcome. You're looking at a live view of Ariane Launch Area 1 in the French Guiana, where we are 2 minutes away from the beginning of the launch broadcast. We'll see if our clock's wanting to work. It did for a minute. We're counting down 23 minutes and counting until launch here this evening. On board, we have a number of different payloads. The first is THEOS-2. It's Thailand's first Earth observation satellite. It was built by Airbus Defence and Space on their Astrobus S platform and is designed for optical measurements with ground resolutions of approximately 1 meter. Also on board tonight is Triton, or Formosat 7R. It is an additional satellite by the NSPO added to the joint Taiwanese-US Formos 7 Cosmic 2 constellation, collecting atmospheric data for weather predictions and ionosphere climate and gravity research. There is also a number of CubeSats on board here this evening, including the Proba VCC, which is looking at vegetation. We also have the Proba V, which will use conduct combined experimental observations with its predecessor, looking at vegetation. We've got PRETTY, which is the passive reflective tome tri and dosimetry, which is files for GPS and Galileo reflector and radiation monitor. That's for the University of Technology in Austria. We have MaxSat, which is an on-orbit demonstrator. We have a number of others as well on board for tonight's flight. If you're just joining us, though, take a moment, engage that like button, share out the stream, invite people to join us in. We're going to listen in to Mission Control here in about 10 seconds as they begin their launch broadcast, giving us an update on everything that we can expect to have happen here this evening, and of course checking in on the mission control room with Stefan Israel as we await an update on continuing to count down T-minus 21 minutes, 15 seconds and counting for the launch of tonight's Vega rocket from the French Guiana. Let's listen in to Mission Control.
Hello everyone and welcome to Road to Space. I'm Eleanor Balenci and I will be your host for this live commentary on Arianespace's flight VV23 on board the lightweight launcher Vega. This is my first commentary. I am very excited. And with me in the studio to provide a deeper insight into tonight's mission is Samuel Rogez. Good evening, Samuel.
Good evening, Eleanor.
So Samuel, tonight two main passengers, THEOS-2 and Formosat 7 or Triton from Thailand and Taiwan, taking to the skies for tonight's mission, entitled Golden Horizon, to illustrate the collaboration between the two countries as they embark on their celestial journey together. In additional 10 CubeSats are also piggybacking a ride aboard this mission. So Samuel, can you please explain in 2 words what happened during the first attempt 48 hours ago?
Sure, Eleanor. We have hundreds of sensors on the launcher and on the launch pad to monitor in real time the different parameters and status of the vehicle and the satellites. As it happens sometimes, one of these sensors had a measurement slightly above its threshold, triggering the hold-on of the final countdown.
And what was done next by the teams?
So first of all, and most importantly, our teams ensured that both the launcher and the 12 satellites were maintained in stable and safe conditions. Although they worked to understand the reason why the measurement was slightly above its threshold and to implement relevant corrective actions. This work is now completed and we are back to the final chronology.
So does this mean we will start back where the chronology was interrupted last Friday, a few seconds before liftoff?
Actually, no, Eleanor. Earlier today, we went back to the start of the chronology and we rolled over the different milestones that are planned during this sequence. And we are now almost 19 minutes before liftoff, with all parameters being green, as you can see on the control screen. So, all set for the launch.
And last but not least, can you share with us the main milestones of tonight's launch?
Yes, of course. So tonight's mission will see the following main steps. First of all the parameters must be green to authorize the liftoff. If so, we will initiate the final countdown 4 minutes before liftoff. Liftoff will be at 10 hours, 36 minutes and 25 seconds on the way to the low Earth orbit for sun-synchronous mission. The two main passengers will be separated 54 minutes and 22 seconds after liftoff, and finally the 10 CubeSats will be separated 1 hour, 43 minutes and 58 seconds after liftoff.
Thank you, Samuel. So we're all set for tonight's launch, and the teams in Jupiter are now focusing on final preparations ahead of liftoff. Our launcher is standing tall on its pad with its passenger big and small safely tucked under the fairing. Tonight's mission will be just under 2 hours long as Vega delivers our passenger into orbit. Samuel, could you take us through the key events we can expect during tonight's mission?
Yes, of course. So Vega launcher will take off from the French Guiana, so Guiana Space Center in South America, toward north. It will be first the ignition of the P-80, the first stage of the Vega launcher. The P-80 will push for about 2 minutes, and then a separation command will be sent to cut out the stage and separate it. This will be followed by the ignition of the second stage, the Zefiro-23, which will take over from the P-80 and continue increasing the launcher speed. It will then be separated, and this time it's the Zefiro-9 that will provide the launcher thrust. The Zefiro-9 will operate for almost 3 minutes, and during this phase we will jettison the fairing that protected the satellites as they pass through the atmosphere. Then the Zefiro-9 will be separated as well. Next comes an important step. It will be the first ignition of the upper stage, the AVUM, which is a rather special stage because it uses liquid propellants. It will be ignited and then it will shut down about 7 minutes later. We'll then have a long phase known as Ballistic phase, which will lead us over Australia, where we will carry out the second ignition of the AVUM. And shortly after, we'll separate THEOS-2 and Formosat 7R, and they will be released at the same time, simultaneously. Then after a short pause, we will reignite the AVUM upper stage for the third time to reduce the orbit altitude. After this burn, rather short, we'll have another ballistic phase that will take us over Cuba, where we can have the fourth ignition of the AVUM to circularize the orbit, and then separate the auxiliary passengers, the different CubeSats. Last step of this VV23 mission will be the final burn of the upper stage over Canada to reduce the altitude and avoid leaving debris orbiting the Earth.
Thank you, Samuel. Liftoff is scheduled in just over 15 minutes time. We will be hearing all the major milestones of tonight's mission announced by the Range Operations Manager, or the DDO, as we call him in KOUROU, Axel Serges. Next to him is tonight's Mission Director, Bruno Hérin. Our two main passengers are due to separate simultaneously some 54 minutes after the launch, while our batch of smaller satellites, the 10 CubeSats, will be released around 50 minutes later. So now, let's first take a closer look at one of our first main passenger, Formosat 7R Triton.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. We are now counting down 14 minutes, 43 seconds, and counting until launch of tonight's Vega rocket from Ariane Launch Area 1 in the French Guiana. They are running through some of their B-roll video packages explaining about the payloads on board, but they love some copyrighted music, so we're going to take some time to answer your guys' comments and questions. You can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad, and we'll work on answering those live to the best of our ability. Just make sure you're tagging us there. If it's your first time here, though, welcome here at the launch pad. It's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together. Catching up on the chat with some of the questions coming in here. Moma Oki, love that Lunex link. I sent a photo and my daughter's name in after she... Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, Moma, but we are honored to carry that photo and name as part of our Lunex 1 mission, our first mission to the moon here at the launch pad. Thank you so much for including her. We're honored to carry that. Catching up on the rest of the chat here. Blank needs a Vega model. Absolutely. Something always needs some more rocket models. The man, the myth, the legend, what are these two satellites? So there's a bunch of satellites on board. There's THEOS-2, there's Triton, and a number of CubeSats as well. If you go over to tlpnetwork.com or click the link in the chat, we do have a breakdown of the payloads that are on board today's flight. Just click on the Payload tab, and you can see a breakdown of the two main payloads. We'll listen back into Mission Control here shortly for another update on tonight's payload, or on tonight's launch countdown. We are now T-minus 12 minutes, 45 seconds, and counting until launch. Everything right now on the launch board is green, which is a great sign as we continue through the final bit of the count.
And of course, we'll be taking a closer look at our second main passenger shortly. But first, we'd like to point out this panel, which we call the status panel, here in Jupiter Mission Control, and all eyes are focused on it ahead of the mission, Samuel.
Yes, it's an important panel. You show it on the right of the screen. It's a panel that summarizes the status of each of the systems and subsystems that are needed to achieve this launch. So it's very like a traffic light. If it's green, you can go ahead. If it's red, you'd better stop. For instance, what can lead to a red status could be the weather or the lightning risk, or if there is any trouble with the antennas, for instance, which are following the launcher. Of course, the launcher and the satellites have also their own parameters which are monitored, and they can raise a red in case there is any trouble.
And for now, good news, Samuel, we're all green, so
Yeah.
we are going to check out the other main passenger, Earth Observation Satellite THEOS-2.
And if you're just joining us, we are now counting down 12 minutes and counting until launch. Keeping an eye on that board. Everything still green on the countdown. Justin, thank you so much for that super chat. $1.99 there with an eyeball. Appreciate it. Helps us continue to expand our coverage, bringing you guys the best possible coverage of everything space. We're super excited to be planning some trips over to the UK and Europe to take you inside some really exciting new up-and-coming launch providers, launch facilities over in the UK and Europe. And that all goes directly into making that possible. Astro 3DI, ESA stopped using the Ariane 5 a bit early as Ariane 6 has been delayed. Better to have more of an overlap. So the issue with that is Ariane 5 stopped being sold years ago. And Ariane 6 was supposed to have flown a couple of years ago already. There was supposed to be an overlap, But because Ariane 6 was delayed, Ariane 5 completed the remaining missions, which should have been the overlap, but because Ariane 6 is delayed, there's now this break between the two. And that's common to see. We've seen this with other launch vehicles as well. I mean, even just look at Shuttle. NASA didn't have its own vehicle for a very long time, even though they thought they were going to, and they didn't, and it was like over a decade. So it's common to see those changes and delays. Obviously, an overlap would be better, but it's not too critical that they're not. The payloads that are supposed to fly on Ariane 6 still will. They're just unfortunately delayed. But we'll hopefully see Ariane 6 fly early next year. And we're definitely counting down for that. Jonathan, they sure do love their copyrighted music. They do. A lot of the launch providers do, and I understand it. Music does add definitely to these, coverages, but it makes it a little bit harder on our side. But we appreciate working with them to the best of our ability to bring you that coverage. We are now counting down 10 minutes and counting until launch. I see a couple people talking about the countdown. Yeah, the countdown, unfortunately, their countdown is behind where ours goes, and ours is a little glitchy here this evening. So we've taken ours off the screen just to make sure that we're not putting up a wrong count. But we are counting down now 9 minutes, 42 seconds and counting till launch.
Main passengers are 10 CubeSats, which will be released some 50 minutes after THEOS-2 and Triton, thanks to a specifically designed dispenser called SSMS, able to accommodate pretty much any combination of passengers. Is that right, Samuel?
Yes, it's correct. So SSMS stands for Small Spacecraft Mission Service. It's a dispenser system which is really flexible. It was already flown on several Vega missions. The first one was in 2020 for the proof of concept flight with 53 satellites on board. And then in 2021, we had an hexagonal module supporting a main passenger and carrying as well auxiliary passengers. This time we have 2 satellites on the upper platform and 4 CubeSat deployers on the hexagonal module.
So 6 of our CubeSats were developed as part of the European Space Agency's In-Orbit Demonstration and Validation IOD-IOV program. Let's check it out.
And, of course, another beautiful video. And they are counting down, continuing to count down for tonight's launch. T-minus 8 minutes, 30 seconds, and counting. Everything on the launch board continuing to shine green, which is a great thing for us to continue working towards that launch countdown. But if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. And we're working on answering your questions. You can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad, and we'll do so. Mars, why was the version cleared for a launch when the Vega-C is still grounded? So Vega and Vega-C are technically different vehicles, so that is why they are able to launch with the Vega rocket. Vega-C is a newer version of Vega, and that is why we are seeing this evening's flight able to continue forward. We are hoping to see the return of Vega-C, but at this point, if I'm remembering correctly, that is pointing towards November next year. Seeing the return of Vega-C. But hopefully they'll be able to do so possibly earlier, but they'll do so when obviously it is safe to do so. And right now their focus is on Ariane 6 and bringing it online, which I think we can all say we are very excited to see Ariane 6 finally fly sometime early next year. Catching up on the chat here. NASA still hasn't have its own vehicle after Shuttle. Cygnus, Aerospace, and Dragon are sort of private. Well, they have SLS, so that sort of counts. That is a NASA vehicle. But for everyday use type of thing, like to ISS, that they do not. That would be correct. White Rabbit, welcome. Good to see you. Joined late. Where's tonight's launch? We are launching from the KOUROU Spaceflight Center in French Guiana. In the bottom right corner of your screen is a view of Ariane Launch Area 1, where the Vega rocket is preparing for flight here this evening. We are, of course, counting down also to tonight's Starlink mission. Starlink set to launch 1 hour, 25 minutes from now.
And in addition to the 6 IOD-IOV CubeSats already mentioned in the movie, there are 4 more on board. Can you describe them to us, Samuel?
Yes, of course. So there are first NES for CNES, the French Space Agency, with a demonstrator to detect and localize interfering emissions on Earth. Then PRETI for Graz University in Austria. Then MAXAT for OQ Technology in Luxembourg. And finally, we have PVCC for Aerospace Lab and ESA. So these CubeSats embark a wide range of payloads and demonstrators.
Thanks for these details, Samuel. So, on the ground in Kourou, the teams are hard at work as we prepare for liftoff. Very near to the actual Vega launch pad is the Vega Launch Center, the so-called CDL. All camera teams were out shooting there earlier today. It can be compared to a kind of cockpit on the ground. Can you tell us more about that, Samuel?
Yes, indeed, there are several teams. There are those located in Jupiter building, which is a kind of control tower of the GUIANA Space Center. And you have the Vega Launch Center, Vega CDL, a building called Pandora. And it's located in the Centre Technique, very close to Jupiter-2. Inside this building, you can find all launcher and launch complex operations teams, as well as the technical authorities, which you see on the screen. These teams manage and monitor all the operations leading to the launch up to the last second.
And now, Samuel, we are waiting for the DDO to announce the start of the synchronized sequence. And how do you think the team feel at this moment?
Yeah, there is clearly some stress because you realize it's quite a great achievement. There is clearly some concentration.
So yes, we just heard.
Just wait. We just wait to find.
Top à 0, moins 4 minutes.
And you have it.
Yes, we heard the DDO announce the start of the all-important synchronized sequence. It's one of the major milestones of tonight's mission.
Yeah.
But what does it mean, Samuel, and what's the next step?
It's the start of the synchronized sequence is an important step because it marks the start of the final phase that will prepare for takeoff and gradually give the launcher full autonomy to proceed with the liftoff.
So here it is, standing on its launch pad, but the first parts of the launcher arrived in Kourou back in June, right?
Yes, indeed. Most of the components of the Vega launcher arrived by sea, as you see, at the port of Kourou and were then transported by road to the Space Center. The first stage, the P-80, arrives on the mobile platform on the Vega launch pad. It's hoisted into the mobile gantry. And then we have the second stage, the THEOS-2, which is lifted and assembled on top of the first stage, the P-80, as you see on the screen. Step by step, we are building up an assembly of solid rocket boosters. The third stage, the THEOS-9, which you see on the screen, is hoisted into the building and integrated on top of the THEOS-23. And then it's the AVUM upper stage, which arrives in its container. It's unloaded and then integrated onto the THEOS-9 stage. As for the satellites, THEOS-2 arrived by plane in August and was prepared in a special facilities, clean rooms under a very controlled atmosphere. And a number of operations are carried out in autonomy, and then THEOS was integrated on its adapter, filled with propellants. You can see the special suits we have used. Formosat, on its side, arrived by plane also in July, and then followed a similar path with preparation, integration on its adapter, and propellant filling. The CubeSat deployers were integrated on the hexagonal structure below the platform. So for this mission, we had 4 deployers mounted on the hexagonal module. Then Formosat 7R and THEOS-2 were integrated on top of the SSMS on the upper platform. And once the assembly was completed, it was enveloped in the fairing, which protects the satellites for the next phases of the mission. The upper composite was then transferred to the launch zone on a mobile platform. It's hoisted at the very top of the launcher and integrated on the AVUM. Several hours ago, we removed the mobile gantry, and we have now the launcher ready for flight.
So in a few seconds, the DDO is going to announce the 1-minute mark ahead of liftoff. All the markers are green to go, as you can see on the status. Samuel and I are going to interrupt our commentary now and let you sit back and enjoy the launch.
T-minus 70 seconds.
DDO, attention pour moins d'une minute. Top à 0 moins 1 minute.
T-minus 50 seconds and counting till launch. If you're just joining us, you're looking at a live view of Ariane Launch Area 1 in the French Guiana, where we are now less than 30 seconds away from launch of tonight's Vega rocket.
À tous de DDO. Attention pour le décompte final. Dix, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top. Allumage P80, décollage.
And we have liftoff of Vega from the Ariane Launch Area 1.
Acquisition de la télémesure par la station de Saint-Jean-du-Maroni. Les paramètres à bord sont normaux. Trajectoire nominale. Pilotage calme, propulsion nominale. Tous les paramètres à bord sont normaux.
The next major milestone coming up will be the separation of the P80 and ignition of the Z23, or first stage cutout and stage separation, followed by second stage ignition. We're expecting to see that in the next 20 seconds.
Tous les paramètres à bord sont normaux. Trajectoire nominale, pilotage calme. Séparation P80.
Samuel, oh my God, I am very
Allumage
impressed.
Z23.
While the launch, look, we can see
Yeah.
the P80 separation in live from the cameras. It's wow.
This is incredible.
Spectacular.
I am very impressed to have witnessed this launch
La
for the
propulsion est
first time
nominale,
in my
tous les
life.
paramètres
It's
à bord sont
crazy
normaux.
how fast it went.
Yeah. And so far everything is nominal, so it's very good. So in the THEOS-2 has ignited, so started the second stage phase.
Mm-hmm.
So in a few seconds, he will have finished his job and separate from the launchers,
Mm-hmm.
and then the
Pilotage
third stage will continue to continue the mission.
So now we are waiting for the next announcement, and this follows the
Trajectoire
basic
nominale.
principle. When it comes to a space launch, you've got to shed as much weight as possible and as fast as possible, right?
Yes, indeed. The principle is to get rid of the useless mass. As you heard, we separate the first stage, then we soon separate the second one. And the basics is when an engine has finished burning and consumed its propellant, we just separate it. If we keep it on board, we would bring useless mass into space. And this useless mass is also costly in terms of propellant. So that's why we split a rocket into different stages to be able to get rid of the mass as we go, when it's no longer necessary.
So within 3 minutes, our launcher has gone from 138
Trajectoire nominale,
tons to
pilotage calme.
21. That means it's shed some 85% of its mass.
Yes, it's huge, and at the same time, we've gone from 0 to 3.6 kilometers per second
Séparation
in
Z23 confirmée.
this time. So it's in 3 minutes. So it's crazy. So we have confirmation of the THEOS-23 separation, and we should have soon the THEOS-9 ignition. So we will just wait a few seconds for the
Allumage
video to
Z9
confirm.
confirmé. Séparation quoi?
It's just confirmed.
It's
Good.
confirmed, yes. So the fairing is off now. Why? Does it mean we don't need to protect our satellite anymore?
In fact, the fairing protects the satellites when the launcher goes through the atmosphere, because clearly when we pass through the atmosphere, it generates quite a significant environment due to the aerodynamic friction. So, for instance, it generates vibration or heat for the satellites. Once we are out of the atmosphere, these aerodynamic loads have been completely reduced, so we can just get rid of the fairing. Once again, the principle is to avoid dragging a mass that is not useful anymore.
And now looking at our 3D rendering of events, the animation takes into account the position of the sun and its reflection on our launcher. What we're looking at is an animation of what is expected to unfold out in space at this very moment. So this is as close as we can get to real-time imagery.
Yes, this 3D animation does not show the real-time behavior of the launcher, but it shows the predicted behavior of the launcher as it is expected. So it includes, of course, the trajectory, the velocity, the altitude, the ground track, etc., the different stages separation, but also the launcher maneuvers. It really shows the launcher orientation through time, including the orientation with respect to the Earth or to the Sun.
And tonight's is a sun-synchronous mission. What does that mean?
Yes, sun-synchronous orbit means that the satellites are flying over the Earth region always with the same sun orientation, so always at the same local time. It means you can easily compare pictures taken at the same time, but for different days. This is why it's often used for Earth observation satellites.
But it also means we have to launch at a precise time and have no launch window.
Yes, indeed, because we target precise time for the orbit. So, given the mission duration from the takeoff to the injection on the orbit, then we need to launch at a precise time to respect the final local time of the orbit.
And now, Samuel, we are waiting for another announcement, which is the Zefiro separation, the Zefiro-9.
Yeah, we are close to the end of the Zefiro-9 burning, so we call it queue de poussée, so the last part of the burn. So far, as we hear from the DDO, all the parameters on board are nominal, and the control of the launcher is very calm. So this is really good news. It means everything is on track and fine. We just had the confirmation. For the Zefiro-9 separation. Yeah.
They just confirmed the separation of the third stage. So can you please explain to us what does it mean?
So it means we have finished the 3 successive significant acceleration flight phases, and now the launcher is flying very fast at 7.5 kilometers per second. So just to compare, it's 30 times faster than a commercial aircraft. So that's huge. And we are flying roughly at 200 kilometer altitude. And as for the previous stages, the Zefiro-9 is separated and the fall down is located in the ocean.
And now we are pursuing with the waiting for the Galileo signal and the Bermuda acquisition visibility like, where everything is normal right now.
Acquisition de la télémesure par la station de Bermude.
Path tonight. Yeah.
So we are just acquiring acquisition from Bermuda. So now we are in contact with this station.
And Vega's flight path tonight takes it northwards across the Atlantic over the North Pole and back down, and along its journey, tracking stations along its path pick up the launcher signal. Who's in charge of this, Samuel?
So yeah, it's a CVI team, so it means Control Visuel Immédiat, or real-time monitoring, and they receive major flight parameters from the launcher all along the flight to monitor what's happening on board. It's a bit like the doctor checking the health monitoring parameters to verify that everything is fine on board. So the team in charge is located in Gallio on La Montagne des Pères, close to Kourou. It's possible, as you said, thanks to several ground tracking stations used for this mission, which are located along the ground track of the launcher. So first in French Guiana, then on Bermuda Island, and then Canada and Australia.
And so another step coming up is the confirmation of the first ignition.
Perfect timing,
yes,
Eleonore. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So we had the confirmation of the first AVOM ignition.
Yes, absolutely. What does this mean?
It means that this is the last stage of the launcher. It will deliver our first customers to their final destination with a very good precision. So the first AVOM boost is mandatory to reach an intermediate elliptical orbit. When achieved, the stage will just cut off. During this phase, as we heard, we have Bermuda station, and then we'll have Gatineau, which will be acquiring data.
And we're calling it the first boost because one of the features of this upper stage is that it is restartable. It can fire and shut down up to 5 times. Why is this necessary?
This capability, this restart capability, allows to inject the different passengers in different orbits. It's like doing several stops with a bus. This is a major feature of Vega. Not all the launchers can propose such upper stage reignition capability. For example, today we'll have a change of orbit in between the 2 spacecraft separations, as requested by the customers, so they can go exactly precisely where they want to go.
And this capability is further extended on Vega-C?
Yeah, that's right, because the total number of upper stage ignitions is extended from 5 on Vega to 8 on Vega-C. This way, we can reach up to 3 different orbits on Vega-C.
So hugely flexible and adaptable service for the satellite, and so a massive advantage for multiple customers.
Indeed.
So obviously a mission like this is the result of years of collaboration between teams all over Europe, what's known in the space world as Space Team Europe. Space Team Europe is an ESA-led initiative that brings all space actors under the same umbrella, with no barriers or boundaries between companies.
Yes, it's a very complex preparation. It implies years of work for many people from various companies in different countries around Europe, across Europe.
Yeah, so for a launcher like Vega, where do all the parts come from?
Yeah, let's take a few examples. There are parts coming from all over Europe, as I said, with teams working all together. If we come from top to bottom, the fairing is produced by the aptly named Beyond Gravity in Switzerland, the dispenser by Saab in Czech Republic and Italy, the adapter and the AVUM structure by Airbus in Spain, and the boosters, of course, by Avio in Colleferro in Italy. So here, I would like to take the opportunity to say a warm hello and congratulate all these teams for all what they did to make this launch happen.
Yes, congratulations to everyone. It represents years of work. And now on the ground in KOUROU too, there are many different teams involved. Some people live there year-round, others spend weeks or months on site ahead of each mission. Our camera team went out to meet them. We are going to take a look right now.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. We are now 12 minutes, 10 seconds into today's flight of Vega for VV23, carrying 2 main payloads on board. Payload deployment will not occur until we have first payload deployment at 54 minutes, 22 seconds into flight. We also then have the second payload deployment occurring. I'm trying to make sure that I'm saying this right. Excuse me. Yes, so we have the first payloads deploying 54 minutes into flight, and then the CubeSats won't deploy until 1 hour, 43 minutes into flight. And that's just due to what they were talking about, being able to change those orbits to actually be able to fly in different ways. For those counting down to the launch of Starlink tonight, we have had an update from SpaceX. They have delayed tonight's launch again. They're now targeting 11:38 p.m. Eastern Time. That is now another 32-minute delay, continuing to push into those later launch windows. They had 6 launch windows for tonight, the first being at 8:42 p.m., and those extend till 12:10 a.m. At this time, they are targeting the 3rd or 4th backup opportunity that they had. So they can delay a couple more, maybe one more time, but we'll be keeping a close eye on that, and we'll of course bring you live coverage of Starlink 6-22 when it happens later this evening. If you haven't yet, take a moment, engage that like button, and subscribe so you never miss another live launch coverage. We're answering your comments and questions. You can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad. As we wait for them to head back into mission control, consider joining us over on our TLP Discord. That's where our community hangs out in between launches, and we invite you to be on there even when there's not a launch. It's where the awesome space community is, because space is better together. And consider joining the TLP crew. We are looking to bring on a few new moderators, as well as some volunteer journalists and researchers onto our team, so consider sending in an application there as we continue to bring you the best possible coverage of everything space from around the world. There is a lot happening. It's a lot to cover, and we're excited to continue to expand our team. Steven saying, anyways, thanks for the good commentary, Zach, entire TLP crew. Appreciate you. Ginger, have a great night. Thanks for tuning in as well. Steven's heading off to bed as well. Thank you so much. I know it's a late one for some people, and we appreciate you joining us. Norman, thank you so much for that super chat. Another one there this evening. Thank you for your support. I wanted to call that one out earlier. We were in those final minutes of the count. Norman sent his chat. Greetings from Bexar County in South Texas near San Antonio. Thank you for that $10 super chat, and then another $2 there with I think it's a dancing pair. I think that's what that is. We really do appreciate your continued support of what we do here at the Launchpad. Continuing to watch now, 15 minutes into today's flight.
Signal the start of our first long ballistics phase. So what does this ballistics phase mean for all launcher and all passengers?
Once the AVUM engine shuts down, the launcher and the spacecraft are on an elliptical orbit with no engine thrusting, and it will last approximately 36 minutes. So this coasting phase or ballistic phase will enable us to reach an altitude above 600 kilometers. During this ballistic phase, the launcher will keep its momentum and continue its path around the North Pole and then down to Australia. So we had just confirmation of the first AVUM cutoff, which is very good news. It means we are at the right location expected.
Absolutely. So, Samuel, one day we'll be sitting here commenting on the new upper stage engine, which will take over from AVUM and which is currently being tested.
This is the M10 engine, which we see at the screen, and it's developed by Avio with a thrust class of 10 tons. It's the first of its kind to be successfully tested in Europe. It's made with additive layer manufacturing, and it's part of the development of Vega-E launcher, an evolution of Vega, a project coordinated by the European Space Agency with the goal to qualify this next version starting in 2026. It uses oxygen and methane as propellants, and it was successfully tested in Avio's test facility in Sardinia, as you see the videos, last year and since August this year. Recently, we achieved a firing test of 340 seconds and changing several times the propellant mixture ratio, which was a key because if we can modify the level of thrust of the engine, then it's a really key step towards reusability.
Thanks for that, Samuel. Can you just take us back through the mission so far and where we are now?
Yeah. So Vega liftoff took place from the GUIANA Space Center. It was triggered by the ignition of the P-80, which is the first solid stage of Vega launcher. The P-80 stage pushed for about 2 minutes, and then it was separated with the separation command, and the stage was just cut from the launcher. It was followed by the ignition of the second stage, THEOS-2, which took over from the P-80 to continue increasing the launcher speed. It was then separated, and this time it was the THEOS-9, the third stage, that provided the launcher thrust. During the THEOS-9 phase, which lasts for almost 3 minutes, we had the separation of the fairing that protected the satellites as we passed through the atmosphere. Then THEOS-9 itself was separated as well. Then we had an important step with the first ignition of the upper stage, the AVUM, the one equipped with liquid propellants, and it lasted approximately 7 minutes, and then we shut it down just recently, and we start the long phase we know as ballistic phase that will lead us over Australia, where we'll carry out the second burn of the AVUM stage, and shortly after separate simultaneously THEOS-2 and Formosat 7R. After a short break, we'll then reignite the upper stage for the third time to reduce the orbit altitude, and this burn will be very short, and after we'll have another ballistic phase to go over Cuba, where we can have the fourth ignition of the AVUM and the separation of the CubeSats. The very last step of this mission will be the final burn, the fifth burn of the upper stage over Canada, to reduce the altitude and avoid leaving any debris on the orbit orbiting the Earth.
Thank you very much, Samuel, for these details and very important steps. And now we are waiting for the loss of signal in Gatineau. And during this ballistic phase, if we lose contact with our launcher, this is completely normal, right?
Yes, indeed. During the ballistic phase, it's normal that the ground tracking stations are not able to maintain the contact with the launcher as we go up to North Pole. And yes, we have just confirmation of the loss of Gatineau, so which was expected. And as soon as in fact, memory on board is recording all the flight data we have, so it's not an issue. And as soon as the next ground station will be in visibility, so it will be New Norcia in Australia, then the data will be downloaded. So this way, all the information of the flight can be available.
So Samuel and I are now going to interrupt our commentary for the next half hour during the first ballistic phase. You can follow the mission here on Road to Space thanks to our state-of-the-art 3D imagery, which shows you in real time the launcher's expected behavior up in space. The second AVM boost will occur a couple of minutes later and will be followed by the separation of our two main satellites at H plus 54 and 53 seconds. The CubeSats will be released some 50 minutes later. So Samuel and I will be back at H plus 50 minutes. See you soon.
See you soon.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. That concludes Arianespace's main commentary coverage as the vehicle is now in a coast phase, as you heard there. They will actually deploy those payloads with the first payloads set to deploy at T plus 54 minutes 22 seconds. That is just over 30 minutes from now. And they are continuing to have the live simulated view of today's payload. As we await for them to confirm the payload deployment of the payloads, our teams are working to get ready for the coverage of Starlink 6-22, and with that there will be a little bit of an overlap on the two broadcasts. So what we're going to do, it's a rare thing, but we're not going to have live views of payload deployment from Vega. If we were, we would stay live, but what we're going to do is we're going to conclude our live coverage of tonight's Vega flight VV23 carrying THEOS-2 and Triton, as well as some CubeSats on board. You can follow along on Arianespace's YouTube channel or social media for confirmations of those deployments, as the vehicle will now be in a very long coast phase, a total of over an hour and a half of coast between all of the deployment sequences. So follow along via social media for confirmation of those deployments, and then we hope to invite you back later tonight for the launch of Starlink 6-22 from Slick 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida, with the new T0 of 11:38 p.m. Eastern Time, or 1 hour 39 minutes 30 seconds from now. Here at the launch pad, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together. So if you haven't yet, take a moment, engage that subscribe button so you never miss another live launch coverage. Join us over on our TLP Discord. That's where our community hangs out in between launches, as well as just talks about everything space. And if you're interested in joining our crew, our applications are open. We are looking for a few more people to join as moderators, as well as volunteer journalists and researchers, as we continue to bring you the best possible coverage of everything space. That's going to do it for our live broadcast of tonight's Vega launch. We hope to see you in just over an hour and a half for the launch of Starlink. But from our TLP Canada studio, I will see you next time, because space is better together. Good night.